It's July 31st here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the scorching heat here in South Korea. The entire nation has been seeing extreme temperatures over the weekend, reaching as high as nearly 39 degrees Celsius. At least 10 heat-related deaths have been reported this summer so far. And extreme weather is gripping the entire world. It's so hot in the US that it's now taking a toll on local businesses, while China has been battered by a typhoon. Over in Pakistan, an explosion which appears to be a suicide bombing has ripped through a political rally, killing at least 44 people. A blistering heat wave baked the entire nation over the weekend, bringing the heat-related death toll to at least 10 this summer alone. Now, the country will have to bear with the heat throughout the week. Our Shin Ha-young starts us off.
As the scorching temperatures continue, the number of deaths from heat-related illnesses is rising, particularly among the elderly. Heatwave alerts were issued across most part of the country over the weekend, as the high in some areas reached almost 39 degrees Celsius. According to the Ministry of Interior and Safety, at least 7 people died on Saturday and more than 70 people suffered heat stroke. The heat-related death toll has now risen to 10 since May 20th, for more than the same period last year. Those who died were mostly people in their 70s or older and were found dead inside greenhouses or on farms in regions where temperatures shot up to daily highs of between 33 and 36 degrees Celsius. More deaths are expected to be reported as data for Sunday is yet to be released. With the number of casualties on the rise, the Ministry of the Interior and Safety ordered local governments and relevant authorities on Sunday to make efforts to implement measures for 3 vulnerable groups during the extreme heat, including elderly farmers, elderly individuals living alone, and outdoor construction workers. It is scheduled to hold an emergency meeting on Monday with relevant authorities to enhance the heatwave response system to prevent heat-related illnesses. Meanwhile, on Sunday evening, heavy rain reaching up to 80 millimeters per hour poured down on some areas of Seoul, causing a temporary halt to subway and train operations. According to railway operator Korail and Seoul Metro, at 6:50 p.m. on Sunday, the operation of subway line number 1 was halted. Trains including KTX services also experienced disruptions. All trains, including on line number 1, resumed operations at 7:15 p.m. after railway safety was confirmed. With the heavy rain alert lifted nationwide, the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters lifted its response level as of 11:30 p.m. Sunday, which had been issued at level 1. It also lowered the National Disaster Alert level from caution to attention. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Now, in fact, unprecedented heat waves have put the entire world on high alert. American companies are facing setbacks due to the extreme heat, while China's Xinjiang region even saw temperatures rise to 52 degrees Celsius. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The intense heat wave globally has impacted countries in a number of ways. Over in the U.S., heat warnings and advisories have been issued throughout the country, affecting a large number of businesses. The state of Texas was particularly hard hit, as the average weekly working hours of workers in small and medium-sized businesses in the tourism, entertainment, and recreation sectors plunged by about 20% from mid-June to mid-July compared to the same period in 2019 to 2022. Analysts say that if the heat wave continues, Texas will face billions of dollars in economic losses. China has also seen volatile weather this summer. Some parts of China, including the Xinjiang region, has seen some of the most brutal summer heat in recent years, reporting temperatures as high as 52 degrees Celsius. China was also slammed by Typhoon Toksuri over the weekend, bringing heavy rainfall to several regions in northern China, including the capital Beijing. The massive storm has resulted in the evacuation of 400,000 people in the Fujian region, with China's weather authorities issuing a red alert for the first time in 12 years. Meanwhile, wildfires that have lasted now for more than 2 weeks in parts of Greece have impacted the tourism industry there. A total of 667 fires broke out across Greece in the past 10 days, an average of more than 60 fires per day. The wildfires this summer were all the more devastating for the country as they occurred during the peak of their summer vacation season. The island of Rhodes, known for its resorts, has been especially hit hard, with 20,000 vacationers evacuating the island earlier this month due to wildfires. With July 2023 already being recorded as the hottest month in human history by the World Meteorological Organization, and August still around the corner, concerns are high as to how much more damage the intense global heat will cause to people and the economy. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
North Korea last week commemorated the 70th anniversary of the Korean War Armistice, or Victory Day as it is known in the regime, with a military parade and a show of diplomacy. For more, we're joined by Professor Brian Myers this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, the North showcased drones during the parade with an unmanned aerial vehicle that appears to be modeled after the U.S. Global Hawk surveillance aircraft. Now, Professor Myers, how is this possible?
Well, the basic American airframe is not classified, and since many of these drones have already gone missing in action, their inner workings can be reverse engineered to a large degree. Now, are they going to be quite as high-tech as the Global Hawk? No, but they don't really need to be. Seoul is very close to the DMZ after all, so a drone doesn't need the Rolls-Royce engine of an American drone that's, say, flying around Afghanistan and Pakistan. I think the spy capabilities of these North Korean drones are obviously much more limited, to put it mildly, but any step forward in their technology is something we should be concerned about, especially considering that the South Korean military was unable to shoot down even the very simple drones that flew over Seoul last December.
Right, not as high-tech or advanced as the U.S. Global Hawk. But, Professor, there are speculations that the technology might have been stolen or hacked by North Korea. Now, how likely is it, and is this a concerning matter?
Yeah, well, as I say, the actual airframe is not classified. That's all over the internet. And the thing about drones, any kind of military technology, is it's bound to go missing in action at some stage. Mm-hmm. Drones get shot down, they fall out of the sky, they collide with things. And it's therefore very likely that the North Koreans have got a hold of some of these American models and have been reverse engineering them.
Sure. Then let's talk about the military parade itself. There were lots of weapons on display, right? Including Hwasong 17, Hwasong 18 ICBMs, and also what appeared to be the North's first ever nuclear-armed unmanned underwater vehicle named the Hail. Now, what's behind this grand display? Is it just showing off?
Well, basically, yes. That's what parades are for. They're supposed to make the domestic audience proud, while at the same time intimidating a foreign audience, the American enemy in particular in this case. North Korea is, by its own definition, a military-first state. The entire political culture is very militaristic. A very high proportion of the population is in some branch of the armed forces. As you can't help noticing when you travel around the country, you see people in uniform everywhere. And the military is really the only sector of society that is functioning at an international standard. So the sort of self-congratulation that our states engage in with respect to a broad range of accomplishments, economic growth, the popularity of our cultural exports, sports victories. In North Korea, virtually all boasting is concentrated on military or nuclear progress. And this propaganda boosts national pride and it legitimizes the state itself. But this time, in this Victory Day parade, there was an extra cause for boasting, namely the presence of high-ranking Chinese and Russian representatives. So this show of support is really important to the North Koreans, who in the past have often felt very alone on the world stage.
Sure. Now, speaking of self-congratulation, this Victory Day this year was even more significant with the fact, like you mentioned, there were delegations from Russia and China this year, right? Now, some watchers have noted that North highlighted more solidarity with Russia than the North did with China. Now, based on a press release from the North, now, what's your take on this?
It's not just a question of optics because the North Koreans have actually recognized the independence of Donetsk and Luhansk, those two Russian-controlled territories in eastern Ukraine. So Moscow and Pyongyang really are very close together. And there's quite a tradition here because even during the Korean War, when the Chinese were fighting and dying in enormous numbers on North Korea's behalf, the North Korean propaganda devoted a lot more space to praising the Russians. Now, a main reason why that preference is continuing now is because China's support cannot be relied upon to quite the same extent. As the North Koreans see it, Xi Jinping could come to a friendly understanding with the Americans at almost any time, whereas because of the Ukraine, Russia and the US are now on extremely hostile terms, and they're likely to remain that way for a generation at least. So the Russians can be expected to be much bolder in defying American pressure, and of course American sanctions too. And Russia's commodities are just what North Korea needs at this time.
Sure, that's why the North and Russia are also reportedly in active discussions on weapons exchange, right? Imports and exports. Then how likely is it that Russia has already gotten some weapons from the regime, even though it is absolutely illegal to do so? How is it possible?
Well, we've been hearing reports like this since last year. The US government has identified a Slovakian arms dealer who supposedly tried to broker deals between Moscow and Pyongyang. And the Ukrainians have recently been using North Korean rockets that they claim were somehow captured or intercepted from the Russians. Now, of course, Pyongyang and Moscow deny any such arms trade. But the thing is, the North Koreans make a lot of weapons and ammunition according to Russian designs and specs. So this stuff looks Russian. So it's probably being used in the Ukrainian war already, even if it can't be explicitly identified as North Korean. And it makes perfect sense for Putin to import crude but effective weaponry from a very friendly country that is probably exporting it at bargain prices. And best of all, the North Koreans are likely ready to barter their weapons for Russian food and other commodities. Now, as you say, it is illegal. It violates UN sanctions. But the very fact that the Russian defense minister was there at that parade a few days ago, smiling and laughing in the presence of Russian missiles, shows you that Russia does not care very much about the UN resolutions that it voted for years ago in the Security Council. The gloves came off in this fight a while ago, and the Americans can hardly expect the Russians to obey the sanctions regime at a time when Washington is arming the Ukrainians, including with cluster munitions, which many countries have sworn never to use. So in short, I would say we need to wait for some real evidence that this arms trade is going on, but it would be very surprising if it wasn't.
Right. Let's wait for more clues on how North and Russia have been backing up one another. Thank you so much for your insight this morning. You have a good day.
You too.
COVID-19 is seeing a resurgence in South Korea, with daily cases expected to surpass 50,000, similar to figures seen last winter. Data indicates that COVID-19 cases have jumped 60% in July compared to the previous month, as authorities are concerned that those showing symptoms are not getting tested. Waning immunity and the dominant XBB 1.5 variant's higher infectiousness are raising concerns that COVID-19 may see another massive resurgence. Medical authorities say the rates of serious illnesses and deaths have been stable, but have called for continued vigilance, as the increased number of cases could impact the elderly and the vulnerable groups. South Korea's international flights are slowly recovering to pre-pandemic levels, but flights to some regions are recovering faster than others. According to the Transport Ministry on Sunday, the number of international flight passengers came to 29.5 million in the first half of the year, which is 64.8% of what was seen in the same period in 2019 before COVID-19 broke out. By region, the recovery level was the highest for the Middle East and Africa, with both regions actually seeing more travelers than they did 4 years ago. And that was followed by the Americas and Japan. But flights to China have seen the slowest recovery and are still only at 21% of pre-pandemic levels. And since the end of the pandemic, India has resumed hosting conventions and exhibitions with the help of South Korean operational strategy tactics. Jin has this report.
This is a building in its final stages of construction in Dwarka, a satellite city of New Delhi in India. A smart city project driven by the government of India, this is the India International Convention and Expo Center with a total indoor area of 300,000 square meters. That's roughly 40 soccer fields. Upon its completion, the IICC will have 5 large exhibition halls, a multi-purpose convention center holding the largest auditorium in India with a capacity for 6,000 people, as well as multi-purpose arena facilities to hold 20,000 people.
We have completed more than 90% of physical work, and it is expected that by end of August are done already. So now presently we are doing the testing and commissioning of equipment.
Not previously having had an appropriate facility for exhibitions and conventions, India is making full efforts for the successful construction of the IICC. Now, what stands key to the success is the Korea International Exhibition Center, commonly known as KINTEX, the convention and exhibition center located in Ilsan in Goyang City, Gyeonggi-do Province. 5 years ago, when the Indian government set out to look for an operator, it chose KINTEX as its operating partner with a 20-year contract. After its completion, India will have the 4th largest exhibition and convention facility in all of Asia.
We are planning a Korea Expo in India for July of next year, which would be a platform for Korean companies in the bio, IT and architecture industries, as well as other K-Wave products, to launch in India.
Once K-Exhibition and K-Convention get into full swing in India, small and medium-sized companies in Korea are expected to very quickly dive into the Southwestern Asia market. The India International Convention and Expo Center is set to complete construction and have its official opening in October of this year. Jin, Arirang News.
Here's a 3-year-old giant panda living here in South Korea. But Fubao isn't just an adorable panda. She's part of the Chinese government's efforts to foster friendly relations through pandas. Our Song Yu-jin tells us more about Beijing's panda diplomacy.
Black eyes and ears, surrounded by a white coat of fur. Fubao, the giant panda, has captured the hearts of people in Korea. It's a regular weekday morning, but minutes after Everland opens its gates, it's packed with people.
When I watch videos of Fubao, she's absolutely adorable and charming.
I feel a deeper affection for her because she's the first panda ever to be born in Korea.
This year, the craze around this 3-year-old panda reached new heights when her zookeeper revealed in May that she'll have to move to China next year. After the news, the average number of daily visitors to Everland during the last week of May rose 20% when compared to the first week. For Fubao's zookeeper tryout program, more than 13,000 people applied for 3 available spots. But why does Fubao have to go to China? That's because all pandas and their offspring legally belong to Beijing. China has been long using pandas as a diplomatic tool.
Panda diplomacy began in 1972 when then Chinese President Mao Zedong gifted 2 pandas to the U.S. after President Nixon's visit to Beijing. Their cuteness sparked a worldwide demand, promoting China to loan pandas to other countries as a way to foster friendly relations.
Current Chinese President Xi Jinping sent Fubao's parents, Aibao and Lebao, to Korea in 2016 when bilateral ties were relatively stable. With the recent strain in relations, some wonder whether Fubao could come to the rescue. China's ambassador to Korea, Xing Haiming, visited Everland and presented a thank you plaque on Fubao's 3rd birthday. This was after his previous controversial remarks about China's rivalry with the U.S., which seemingly targeted the Korean government.
Koreans' affection towards pandas can positively influence their perception of China. Everland's panda videos are going viral on Chinese social media platforms. This could lead to new civilian exchanges and public diplomacy programs, ultimately influencing political and diplomatic relations too.
With negotiations for Fubao's return set to start next month, all eyes are on what decision will be made and how that'll affect Seoul-Beijing ties. 송유진, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Pakistan, where at least 44 people have been killed and over 100 wounded in a suicide bombing. Now, the blast took place on Sunday at a political rally in the town of Qam near the Afghan border. There, over 400 supporters of the Jamiat Ulema Islam Party had gathered for a party convention in the lead-up to elections slated for later this year. Now, authorities say the bomber detonated the explosives close to the rally's stage, near the party's senior leaders. Now, so far, no responsibility for the attack has been claimed, but Islamic State is suspected as it operates in bordering Afghanistan and has accused the party of being hypocritical for supporting hostile governments. Last year, IS claimed responsibility for attacks against the party's religious scholars. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says that the war is returning to Russia. Speaking on Sunday, the leader said it was a, quote, inevitable, natural and absolutely fair process of the conflict. His comments come after an announcement by the Russian Defense Ministry on the same day that it had thwarted an attack by 3 drones. The ministry claimed one of the drones was destroyed in the air and the remaining 2 were electronically suppressed and crashed into office buildings. Before that, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that he was not opposed to peace talks with Ukraine after being presented with an initiative from African leaders at a summit in St. Petersburg. But Putin added that a ceasefire is virtually impossible when Ukraine is on the offensive. Now, 3-time Slackline world champion Jan Roos has set a record in Qatar for the world's longest LED slackline walk. Called the Sparkline Challenge, the 31-year-old Estonian walked over 150 meters on a 2.5 centimeter wide LED highline. The line was suspended over 185 meters high across Lusail City's crescent-shaped Katara Towers building. Roos used his time on the line to also perform a variety of tricks, including balancing upside down and lying on his back. And finally, over 150 dogs raced through the Venezuelan capital of Caracas on Sunday to drum up support for animal shelters in the country. Called the Dog Running Race, the second edition of the event saw dogs wearing colorful scarves around their necks cover a distance of 4 kilometers alongside their owners. Now, economic difficulties in Venezuela, including annual inflation of about 400%, have made basic pet care difficult, leading many to abandon their pets and increasing the burden on shelters. The event charged runners $30 to participate, with proceeds going to pets waiting to be adopted.
Good morning. The wilting heat has seared down in Korea with a heat wave warning being in place. Afternoon highs will go up to 35 degrees Celsius in most parts this afternoon. And the number of heat-related illness patients soar during searing heat waves. The least we can do is to drink plenty of water and close the curtains or blinds if you have windows that face the sun's direction in the morning through afternoon. There was heavy passing rain Sunday evening raining, heavy enough for rain alerts to be issued in Seoul and parts of Gyeonggi-do province. And for today, we are expecting another round of passing showers with up to 80 millimeters expected. Heat should linger even at night. In fact, massive heat waves are being reported across the world. Some areas seeing highs nearing 45 degrees Celsius. Well, can't really imagine what they're going through. And it is the hottest time of the year in Korea as well. This week looks to stay hot, so please take well care. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.